all the friends. You know, I don't know if I do these sound things for y'all or for me. A little bit of both, I think. And I was gifted a rain stick recently, and it's been a beautiful piece of nostalgia. I had one in the house when I had a house. I had one when I was very young, and it was huge, and I just remember being very small and like sitting it in the middle of me and just losing myself in the sound. And I think it is immensely calming. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Leliste Atsenta. Happy new moon. New moon in Scorpio. And also yet another meteor shower. I think Draconid's meteor shower was the last moon, and this is Orionid's meteor shower. Catch a glimpse, make a wish, and perhaps pay that much more attention to your dreams. Is what is it? Not AI, 3i something, 3i Atlas. Is that a part of the meteor shower? Is that an ultimate wish? Gosh, there's so many interesting things about that. And while that is a huge diversion, maybe right now, with everything, I have read about it, and I do think there's uh it's like a frequency rain. Like it's like a not a data center, but there's frequency input and output, whether it's gaining information and outputting information. Um, it is in fact potentially doing both, and serves as a like maybe like a data tower. But all of that aside, let me not get distracted. Also, happy Diwali. Happy and blessed light festival in honor of Lakshmi. And may that light radiate in whatever darkness you find yourself in, as we continue to descend into the almost or ultimate darkness of the year. I have a theory, in fact, that Christmas is much spookier and much more ghost ridden than Halloween, even. Halloween is like the invite to the party. Christmas is the party. But I love Halloween anyway. It's just all year round for some of us. Some of us aren't seasonal decoration. Let's see, what up? Light festival for Lakshmi, Diwali, or its meteor shower, new moon in Scorpio, lots of Libra influences, which may be constricting, legislating, but also like very no holds bar. I feel like what we understand of Scorpio and what we understand of Libra are very antithetical, but we can, in fact, synthesize the two. Perhaps Scorpio is not the devil's advocate, but the one that helps us to dismantle rules that no longer function as they were meant to. Whereas Libra, I think, in a very like direct way, and maybe with Uranus in a very stubborn, collective way, is very much like not being able to change your mind, and being so rigid about right and wrong that it ultimately leads you astray. Which all the more is why I developed my necromantic autopsy of truth, because you cannot be led astray. if you, much like Scorpio would, dig very deep into whatever terminology you feel is the framing or structure of your life. Da, 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 da. Sun is Libra. Moon is with Mars and Mercury. In Scorpio, which is interesting. I know Mercury came up in Scorpio before, and it's very much like doxing or like revealing secrets or communicating information. I guess what people would call gossip, only because they fail to understand that it is in fact a safety net. But I do get the sense that it's also very penetrating. Um, it's very forceful and very arrogant in that way. Uh, some people, I think, fail to understand that penetration can be ethereal and can be, emotional. Like someone stares at you and you feel it staring into your soul, versus like physically needing to like rip somebody's heart out, kind of thing. And I think in even a very like social navigating kind of way, like you can emit the interest or feeling without necessarily having to grasp onto the thing. And I think the dating scene very much lacks that information. You can project that information. We've all been there. Seeing somebody or seeing somebody watch you from across the bar, or in a positive or negative way, where you just feel those eyes, um, rather than having to physically or forcefully or too literally um, project those things, rather than just with your intention. And maybe that's because we don't necessarily all know our intentions, or again, misalignment with body and mind, where your body is sort of acting for you, but your mind's like not necessarily on board or on autopilot, so it's not necessarily a part of the conversation. And that is something that we can create more ease in our life by creating alignment there. We can create much more ease in our life by allowing those two identities to communicate, rather than obfuscate each other or contradict each other, because then ultimately it's canceling it out, rather than perhaps finding a perhaps finding a new octave or a new frequency, or a new resolve. Um, Da, 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 da. Opposition Uranus and Gemini, on Taurus's edge, which is honestly exactly that. Rather than this or that, finding the like synthesis in between, um, rather than picking sides, finding a whole new side to orient, rather than canceling out frequencies, coming to a new homeostasis or tertiary. This is the key with binaural beats, actually, why it's a patented science, because two frequencies can create a tertiary frequency that ultimately speaks to a specific element or what have you. And a friend of mine, actually, their partner is studying exactly that, like how frequencies can cancel out each other, because of their natural frequencies and the ways that they evolve. I think this is very true with social relationships too. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love doing these readings, and I love that they resonate with a lot of y'all. And I hope it continues to grow and share in that way. But with social settings, and I've always kind of used this example. Maybe it's because of my industry background, but it's like DJing. You have two records, and they are ultimately being heard at the same time, but you have to create syncopacity within the beats per minute, or one will overplay the other, or you'll end up with sort of a cacophonous, sort of a contrasting of those rhythms, at inopportune times, rather than synthesis. And I feel like people ultimately interact in that way, especially with our understandings of Gemini, where we're like, it's communication. I'm just smart. Da, 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 da. It is not just speaking, and it is not just listening. I talk about this a bit in my speaking power to speaking truth to the power of peace writing. Um, where there's still a level of elitism to that, and there's still a level of the ways in which we deem something worth listening to or not. And I think more often than not, we're listening with the anticipation of correcting, or listening with the anticipation um, of echoing, or listening with the anticipation of speaking, which isn't really listening at all. We can absorb these things, and I feel like maybe there's a fear of being like redirected or misdirected in listening, because ultimately it's, gosh, these like weird things on TikTok, gosh, because ultimately, blah blah blah, space in between. What was I saying? Gemini. Gosh, sorry, I got distracted because random people are trying to like join this. That's weird. And so I have to like shut it down. What was I saying? Listening, speaking. Gemini. And the writing, by the writing, I'm much more clear on that because I have time to like da da da, and I'm not just channeling. Um, the ways, ooh, I know, I feel, the ways in which there's maybe a fear of listening, misdirecting or planting a seed because it's received as truth. Like if we listen to it, it's going to automatically be received as truth, and that's not necessarily true. I think the more clear you are about listening to you than anybody speaking at you, or your ability to speak, or whatever, or your ability to receive and listening, becomes that much more clear, because now you can apply it to sort of like a mad lib that you already have, or apply an integer to an equation that you already have, in which case now you're able to clarify the way this truth rubs against this truth. And if there is friction, or if there is, warmth and radiation or electricity, and that, I think, in a very big way, is how we understand gaslighting, how we understand, when our parents are shitting on us, when the government's gaslighting us, but also how we understand what it is that we want out of a situation, out of any given situation, rather than what we feel our body wants, or what we feel we logically want, even if our body doesn't want it, or feel, sort of coaxed into any one position. And that is, again, this Mars and this Mercury, and this, penetrating sort of arrogance, that it can result in a lot of blindness in the way that we move. um, I think that it also exists in the ways in which we maybe think that we're good or bad people. I think if somebody assumes that they're good constantly, then you've stopped trying, and you're probably more likely to do something bad. And who's to say a quote unquote bad person could potentially choose to, at any given point, make a choice to do something that is quote unquote good. So it does oscillate in between that a lot. I know that may be very hard to hear, because there are people that are very clearly choosing to be very bad, and very, not even quote unquote bad, choosing to sacrifice the well-being of anything and everything around them in order to get what they want. And that is a choice. That is a choice that they continue to choose, in which case, yes, that absolutely qualifies as like not a good thing. But the way I boil it down is like, what is your choice now? That's the only thing I care about. You can tell me you're a good person, you can tell me you're a bad person, none of that matters. What is your choice in the moment? um Hell yeah, numbers of perfection, my friends. uh tom 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 owns, cool, interesting. Let's see. um there's also a stark opposition with Mars and Mercury, um, with Uranus, with Venus and Pluto, triangulating. And I think that's maybe also the ways in which we are swayed, the ways in which our ideas are swayed, because these triangulations overlap in such a way that it's like tension in tides. And so that could be big thoughts, that could be big dreams, that could be a big picture, ultimate things. And maybe when you're not clear on where you are presently, the big picture can be obfuscated a lot for you, and redirected a lot for you. Or, vice versa, really, in any way, to capitalize on ignorance, or where you aren't able to see the full edges or the full form of things. And that is not just light, that is shadow. Light can illuminate, sure, but shadow defines the form. And when we turn our eyes away from those things, and refuse to dig deeper into them, we do blur the vision ultimately. Um, I think that bigger picture is also, yeah, the greater good and the common good. And that's maybe a better way to try and discern that, is it's not just good or bad because I said so or because they said so. It's a matter of, how much more safety is expansive in this, how much more, and not safety as in comfort, how much more, bodily safety, autonomous safety, how much sovereignty is able to expand in this, where my frequency doesn't infringe on another's. That is ultimately the greater good, and like ultimately with astral projection, with conjuring, with channeling, um, ultimately whatever path you're led on in those states and is ultimately for the greater good of all sentient beings. And the way I like to think of that is that my growth will not hurt people around me for sure. My growth will not hurt the plants around me. My growth will not hurt the water. My growth will not hurt the air. It's like not carbon footprint, but like kind of like your spiritual carbon footprint in a way, in a way, if that's easier to absorb. Um, Saturn, Neptune, North Node in Pisces, and Jupiter in Cancer is the other triangulation here, um, which is very watery, very intense. I feel like it's like real choppy waters. It's not even still waters. It's not even calm waters. It's very choppy waters, and it's a matter of how we're navigating those things. Um, Especially with these Gemini influences, it's back and forth and back and forth. Is it making you seasick, or are you able to find a still point? And everything is changing very frantically, very, even the weather is just as bipolar as the rest of us. Then I think, as unstable as it is, it's also offering of great stability. Um, and I think as much as that may not be the focal point of a lot of these readings that you may hear, it is because it's like in video games, this like secret tool that you ultimately need to be able to beat the boss or to get to the next level. Um, Kind of thing. Ooh, light up pumpkins. Thank you so much. Um, Last tidbit. This Aries and Chiron bit, which I have been digging into. The last moon definitely like as an entryway to it. There was another reading that I did that was specifically on Aries and Chiron and its influences on all of us. Um, which I think is very much, like deep-seated memory. Again, the element of nostalgia that I wanted to bring here. That also is coming up in my own life in a lot of ways to sort of, reinvigorate and remind me to romanticize how far I've come rather than to, compare or get sort of swallowed back into, the despair or the trauma of youth. And so I hope that for you all too. Because I think the Aries and Chiron influences in this chart as it is also kind of an infiltration of memory. And I think that infiltration of memory, and I'm not saying there's I'm not saying that there's some other sentience that's like infiltrating. A lot of times that's just other versions of us. A lot of times, more often than not, that's just, if not always, I really could argue that even if you want to entertain other ideas of other entities collaborating in that, sure, but it really does stem from an initial version of yourself. And it's very literally like that, 10-year-old version of you is still alive and still in pain and is still waiting for you to assist in the ways that you want to. Which is also why I've designed the meditations that I have so that you can go back and do exactly that with this version of you. Consolidate timelines, bring it all up from there, and have nobody to blame for infiltration uh, other than your own awareness. Not that we're blaming our awareness, but let's not give anything outside of ourselves more power than it thinks it has. Um, in a very real way, those cyclical memories are cycles of hell. That is, I think, in a very large way what I can't think of the author. Not Demetrius, Don something. Dante's Inferno. What Demetrius? Dante's Inferno. What those cyclical layers of hell are is also like states of uh like trauma in the mind. You know, the deeper seated it is. Have we still failed to acknowledge, you know, the first time we had our heart broken, you know, or the first time somebody pushed us to the ground, you know, maybe we're 6 and didn't realize that that actually like felt like a great betrayal. And from what I've read, betrayal in the mind is is as detrimental as physical harm. So let's not give it more power than it already thinks it has, and let's remind ourselves and the memory that the power lies in your presence with it. Okay, rant over. I will pull some cards for this moon so that we may see what it's got for us. I haven't used these in a while, actually. So, again, nostalgia. These are my OG decks, my zombies. I feel like are very appropriate for the holidays as well. My friends, my friends. Yes. Much like we are hanging out, and much like we have cards in between us, um, you're more than welcome to take 3 deep breaths with me. You are no more open than you are willing to be, and we're only opening ourselves to information from the moon. And you know, for the benefit of all things, and with grace and guidance from our ancestors. I love the spookies. I think that's a big problem, actually. The more people are afraid of allowing those energies, is why they keep coming back. Um, it's not an issue. Somebody had said to me too, like, well, maybe when the unhealed ancestors are ready, they can come to the circle. No, 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 no. They're already here. That's why the world is the way that it is. It's a matter of how healed you are. If you're healed enough to handle that energy in full trust, then you're gold. It's like in the craft too. The do not go into the circle with fear in your heart. It's exactly it. Only because of that mentality, because of the no spookies, no bad juju, no bad energy, only love and light. Because of that, we've really only given them more power. And it feels like they're chasing us, but they really just want us to listen. It's really just stories to be heard. Realistically, this land is a burial ground, and it's just souls that have been hurt in the very same way, only nobody's listened to it in the same way that we want to. So no wonder it tracks itself to you anyway, as love and light as you could be, it will still find you because you're avoiding it, because it grows in that pain. In the same way, when you don't recognize your anger, it seethes and it ferments, and then you snap on somebody. So it is very much the same thing. Um, and I think we're doing ourselves a great disservice and ultimately undermining our own capacity for healing by not trusting ourselves to be prepared for that energy, or not trusting our own power enough to be protected from anything we think is undesirable at that moment. Does that make sense? Okay, rant over. We're going to breathe, and we're not going to discriminate against energies, but we are going to trust in our own power to protect. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Um, it's very airy. Um, which is a lot of thought, but is also a lot of disembodiment. A lot of disassociation. Um, or like separatism within that. That I also felt it a lot in my shoulders and in my heart. And 100%, I think that is maybe the ways in which we silence ourselves and again, kind of suppress information and it begins to boil over. I mean, honestly, even the ways in which we suppress the extremities of our emotions because we're feeling so much in the state of the world as it is. And that's not to say, flip out and scream and punch pillow because I don't really mess with that, you know, very assimilated new school version of understanding primal because that is not what it is. That is another writing I'm working on, but I digress. um, but there are ways to learn how to utilize these emotions in a positive way, just like metal singers learn how to scream so that they don't actually blow out their voice, kind of thing. So uh, rather than silence, direct that energy in a way that you feel is a clear path to release without judgment. And a lot of times that's maybe just like doodling and journaling and scrapbooking or collaging because you're using influences from around you and you can kind of deface the capitalist perspective of it in a lot of ways or take the message of the image and then completely flip it on its head, because in those ways you're not limited to language or understanding. You're not limited to the judgment of that language, and especially if you are only really familiar with English, that is very much a literal language. I think it's designed to get us away from the abstract, and that's not to say like you need to start learning a new language now, but the more you surround yourself with other languages, the greater your perspective can be, because there's so many different ways of expression and because you're going to find so many different tonalities and sensations within that perspective or within that expression. um, just become more curious. And, even with the gibberish that you can say, become curious about it so that your mind can do away with judgment and you can really open the gates to the emotions that you have that are being as suppressed as the bad juju energies or as the ghosties that we also don't want to deal with. And I promise you, it's 100% less scary when you're in the middle of it. I can't tell you how many meditations I've done where I'm like, oh shit, because there's this. I mean, that was what this painting is. It was a she looked like the Exorcist girl, honestly. Like crouching over me, and I had a moment where I was like, okay, I'm very scared. I could open my eyes and the whole thing's over, right? Um, or I can trust myself, and so I trusted myself, and I asked her what she wanted. And then she crawled over to me and she cried and she cried and she cried. And I held her. And she told me that she wasn't a demon at all, that she was, in fact, Mother Nature. And I think that is often the case. That it's not a demon at all, it's a heartbreak that got trapped here or something. And it exists in the spirit world, but it exists in our hearts and our minds and our psyches too. Um, don't check out because it's not like a fancy new light system. You can't, dim the light switches and then, not dim these. It is in your brain, pleasure and pain are in a very similar or same center. So if you turn off one, you turn off all. And I think that as much as we think dealing our emotions is not grounding, that is ultimately ungrounding, which is, again, this like floaty feeling I felt because we're not in our bodies and we're so in our minds that we're also separate from ourselves, you know, trying to apply logos to things that don't make sense. And I do that too, absolutely. I try to apply logic to modern slang. And sometimes it's not, that's not what it's for. Sometimes it's just not what it's for. Um, And I think maybe our emotions are also that too. The logic is maybe the judgment, the same judgment that we fear, where their pain feels justified and we're over here trying to negate that, but also call ourselves light workers or spirit workers. It doesn't make it make sense. It's cognitive dissonance. Okay. Beyond what I was feeling, gosh, everything's so much lately. Five of hearts, queen of hearts, eight of diamonds, nine of diamonds at the bottom of the deck, which I love. Um, it's very much an element of gratitude. It's very much, I think, like a song of gratitude. You know, jingles that get stuck in our head is very much designed to be that way. But also songs that get stuck in our head because we feel them or we resonate them so much, or sounds that just make us feel very, pleasant. That's literally what singing bowls are also designed around, the frequencies and their innovations and their principles. The nine of diamonds is very much a reminder of the sacredness of sound, of the sacredness and the healing inherent in that. And that is speaking your truth, but that is also laughing and finding room for laughter, especially when your heart is broken, or taking a chance on yourself, faith in yourself, because it is a gamble. Um, it's also a step farther than perfection. I feel like that's also the way gratitude compounds. Like when we begin to feel, when we begin to feel deeply in our hearts, suddenly there's so much blood pumping into your life. There's so much creativity pumping into your life. So then suddenly you see all these synchronicities and da 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 da. Um, that is the way in which the mass and density of your own heartfulness and gratitude and intentionality begins to accelerate. So nines being mastery, but it's also like not overnight success, but like when there's progress very quickly. When not like an explosion, but like fireworks, like the capacity for that. And I mean both, really, because our emotions can be very explosive, but they can also be very star stricken and beautiful if they're set to in a way that is intentional and directional rather than cyclical, in an unkempt fire. Um, Other than emotional energy, that is a very literal card, and the Eight of Diamonds is a very literal card because it is diamonds. So we have earth elements. We pretty much have water and earth, which is very much in our body again, which getting back into our bodies, getting back into our heart and our heart center, our spirit center, even finding those things, which we did a meditation together, maybe not all of us, where we felt where we feel, we asked ourselves where we feel that, and it's not necessarily like anatomically exactly where, but paying attention to the sensations that occur when you understand those things. Of course, I'm glitching because I always glitch when I'm getting real shit. Sometimes technology just really, more often than not, really works against me. Um, this is also witnessing, I think. Um, I think it's almost like an observer. We are all sort of silencing ourselves and or retreating in some way, shape, or form, or holding on to things in some way, shape, or form. Um, and so it starts to bounce back and forth in the same way that particles behave in and out of time when they're not being observed. And when they are being observed are either in a decided, agreed upon place because there's multiple observations that then bounce off that, or behave differently in general because now they're being observed, which is why so many experiments will not let the people that are conducting the experiment be aware of the frequency that it's at. Or why, honestly, why I think so many experiments on any kind of divination have gone the way that they have, because particles, in fact, behave differently when they're being observed. Um, the Eight of Diamonds is also asking for witness so that those particles can be observed and so that we can place things um, in our body and outside of our mind and really understand these things. We do this in the real world with people where we're like, hey, let's hang out and talk about this thing, and or talk about a project, or you get a friend's opinion on a thing, or you get a friend to proofread a paper or whatever it is, or you ask a friend, is it crazy that I feel like this, and you have a cool conversation about it. But it is also the ways in which we turn to ourselves and we say, what is my anger? Where is my anger? And we pull it out and up. We pull it out and look at it. What color is it? What shape is it? What does it feel like? Does it have anything to say? And oftentimes, in my experience with those emotions, it says something about what it needs from you and the ways in which it's not trying to hurt you, but things get out of hand when you don't acknowledge it, right? It's this southern node of ourselves that's begging us for recognition, like an unmarked grave is begging us for recognition. And with that, we create that validation. That is another way that we witness. That's why there's so many movements for indigenous remembrance and boarding school remembrance, or excavations for unmarked graves and bodies in prisons in Louisiana where they were left behind. um, all of that is unrest spirits, and they are in fact very much the same kind of energy as our unrequited, unresolved emotions. The Queen of Hearts is this beautiful, lovely underwater zombie. um and much like water being your anchor, I think uh it's also the ways in which we anchor ourselves in our water. Like, um I guess, I wouldn't say water is my anchor because I am not my emotions, but I am anchored in my capacity to be with my emotions. And so that is how I don't know, I guess I would say bring earth to the water, or bring water to the air in a way. Um this Queen of Hearts is very much like doing what you love, doing what you desire, submerging yourself in the things that give you life and the things that give you oxygen. I think there's very much an attention to breath. I think there's very much attention to the ways in which we breathe life into things, which is great because this is a conversation that came up recently in the week. The ways in which we breathe life into growth. Um, the word institution in English, uh, I think, has many more connotations about indoctrination, uh, because of the structures of it and the lack of capacity for dissent. And that being, I mean, even what we see now with free speech, consequences for what? Whereas I can't actually remember the exact word for it, but a friend and I were looking at what the word institution would be in Nahuatl, and ultimately seem to have much more of a root of nurturing, in which case a nurturing education would be like nurturing questions, would be nurturing exploration and creativity, not so much nurturing a paradigm of indoctrination. And so in that way, what way have we created an institutionalized sense of self that dictates rather than allows for exploration or creative questioning? And that's very much also something that I think applies to the government. It's a strange place, or dogmatic religion, where we're asking questions is problematic, where just wanting clarity is problematic, um, rather than it being an opportunity to expand upon. Gosh, even in college, I feel like they shit on all of my good ideas. And exactly, they didn't nurture the expansion of creativity in that, in those opportunities either. and it was sort of just whittled down to what was desirable in a private art school gallery setting, which is muffed up. Um, the Five of Hearts is inverted. Internal emotions. What's cooking on that grill? I think we've got probably a lot of stuff that is burning on that grill that has been forgotten on that grill. Or you know how you like set meat out to thaw and like I'm gonna work on this later. I'm gonna work on this later, and then you forget about it and it goes bad and you can't cook it. We're doing that with our emotions. That's very much because the Five of Hearts is also a center of creation. It's like the waiting room, which is also a cycle of hell. Are we in the waiting room for what it is that we want to do or where we want to take that energy rather than with intentionality expand upon, you know, expand upon and have a full coursed meal on these ideas and ideas that you breathe life into and ideas that you also find witness in, and are able to compound gratitude with. Make sense? Make sense? Okay. Alrighty. We pull a little time, a little space, a little time, a little space. Thank you. I was a fine arts major and an art history minor because I like writing. But I dropped out. I didn't graduate. Not that cool. But everybody I know that dropped out of art school ended up doing really cool stuff with exactly what they wanted to do rather than what they were coaxed into doing. Ooh, I love that. That's good density. Okay. Okay, my love. Much like we are hanging out, much like we have cards in between us, make yourself available to any energy that your body would love to give rise to and that the moon wants to offer you. Out of love for ourselves, out of desire for truth, and for the benefit of all things. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Interesting. I feel like my body turned into like one layer. Which is interesting because this is actually like a yoga thing. You do this with your legs and your arms. And it's very good for resetting your hips or resetting your shoulders. And sort of like popping them back into place, especially if you've got extensive hypermobility. Um, or pain in the in between parts of your shoulders because of too much compacting, you can really uh, stretch elements of yourself that maybe you don't often or have trouble getting to. 100%, and it's an alignment thing. I obviously felt it in a very literal like bone alignment way, but in my mind and breathing, it also seems like two faces kind of coming together, um, and like that energy kind of coming together. And so I'm hoping that that's also because where we are and where we're resonating is bringing clarity and finding synthesis, right brain, left brain kind of information, that we're able to find synthesis with our emotions and the information that we have about them, and without judgment, because at the end of the day, we are doing the best we can with the information that we have. The thing A lot of times, it's just not a lot of information because there's calls, and because there's so much, I don't know, elitism in industry. But that should lead to more curiosity ultimately, rather than judgment. And in that, hopefully, you'll be able to feel the ways in which your shoulders can expand and also the ways in which your own body is capable of holding itself, especially when especially when it feels like everything else is attacking and there's not a lot of nurturing in general. Um, this is also why I love rope and stuff like that. It's ways in which you can like hug yourself, lymph node drainage, ways in which you can be tactile and intimate with the self, without without it feeling like forceful, without it feeling like judgmental, without it feeling like there's expectation at the other end. Um, which I like. I hope that you just find and feel it and bring about in yourself so that there's more openness, with all of these water elements, with that constriction of suppression or judgment or you know tension in the body, um, very much makes me think of like trying to pour out very viscous fluid from a very very tiny hole. um like it's gonna take forever. You're gonna get impatient. It's not the most I guess efficient way to do it. You need a bigger hole. And likewise, if it was less viscous, too big of a hole would be a mess and would be very difficult. um in these ways we create dams of us in our emotions and in our energy, where we can use more discernment and intentionality behind like which spout and the rate of pouring we really want, uh, in the simplest of ways, like watering a garden. Put on the gentle spray instead of the jet stream and water your flowers in your heart. I know that sounds real cheesy, but we're all we're all cheese. Ah, ah, ah. Beautiful. Okay. Beautiful things, and then I'll get to the bottom of the deck. Oh, wait, should I start with that? Okay. Bottom of the deck is the Eight of Cups. We're gonna start there because I think there is a, a lot of anxiety around all of the things that we are connected to, and I get it. That's very much why people don't do these things. The amount of people that have been like that are in my life that are like, oh, I don't meditate because my mind is not a safe place for me, and I feel you. I've been there. 100% I have. So I had to make it a safe place. I couldn't make it an abandoned building. It would keep falling apart. In the same way as that, like we all hate our landlord when they don't want to fix things. Are we a bad landlord to our own body because we refuse to take a look at an issue because it's too overwhelming? Because this Eight of Cups is very much like all of these tendrils, all of these things are connected to something big. Like it's almost like fingers in outlets. It's such a charge. It's so heavy. There's so many options. There's a lot of intensity. Sometimes that means we get hurt. Sometimes that means it feels like people are trying to take from us, and that we, just don't have enough to give, and energetically or mentally or emotionally or otherwise. um and so it's really intense, and I feel you, but I do think a lot of times the I guess receiving end of it has more to do with exactly that, their quality. I don't push nothing, none of the woo woo stuff, because I love it and I know it works, but it means nothing to somebody who doesn't believe in themselves. Because if they won't believe in it, then they're already not listening. And then again, we get back into this Gemini idea of listening and speaking. They can speak all about their problems, but they refuse to listen to any possibility of solution. That is a willingness and a choice. And ultimately, I ought not get frustrated by their unwillingness to listen to me because it is ultimately proof that they are not willing to listen to themselves. And that has nothing to do with me. One day they'll listen to anybody else because they learned how to listen to themselves. That's just it. Um, with that being said, you lead by example. There's the Eight of Wands, the Three of Wands, and the Magician. The Magician and the Three of Wands are inverted. The Ace of Wands is extroverted. I don't think that's how you say it. But that is very important because, much like I was saying about watering and all of this, we create safety within, and because we're able to do that within ourselves, we create that that kind of environment, that kind of safety. It radiates and it becomes an example where then people aren't not listening to you when you're trying to tell them that you know better, or that you have an idea, or that you know a way to get out of this. They're going to come asking you because now they've seen it for themselves, and they're like, hey, I never thought I'd be here, but can you tell me what that was about, because I feel like I need to try that. And that is how we move fucking mountains. Honestly, you make the mountain come to you. Really, you just be such a glorious mountain that the rest of the mountains come to you. And honestly, in an interesting way, that's kind of how a lot of sacred sites were developed. Not that these mountains moved toward each other, but that there's always kind of a central capacitive point. Like within microchips as well. There's like a main capacitor, and then there's other elements that function within it and like into it and innervate within it to create charge, to create information. Da 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 da. I don't really know how computers work. Um, and I think that's very much a part of it. You become a capacitor, and so it becomes a charge and becomes input and output for others as well. Because you lead by example, it becomes its own penetrating frequency, and not by force, just by power. Power does not require force. Power is, I don't want to say passive, but like it has nothing to prove, and has a momentum that is more consistent than forcefulness. Forcefulness is also looking for weakness. Power does not need that. Um, it's a consistent frequency, like a consistent motion forward, in the same ways that, like, the ocean waves will eventually erode at land or rock, even. Not because it's pounding it, but because it's just a steady, constant ebbing and flowing that ultimately uh, begins to define its own boundaries. And that is one of the coolest things about water, amongst many, many other things, which is also a fun thing that I'm working on writing. Um, it's a very good breath for when we have a lot of emotions or a lot going on. Um, I mean, I'm sure you've seen me too. When there's so much coming at me at once, I kind of like short but sharp exhales, like, and that's very much a fire breath for me. That helps me sort of clarify and direct at any given moment. I do it when I'm frustrated. I do it when I'm tired. I do it when I'm distracted, just to refocus, to repivot. It's kind of like a good reset fighting stance, um, just in my breath and in my body. And I feel like it's very invigorating. There is a lot to say about, especially if there's an initial inhale through the nose, then you're releasing more nitrous oxide. That's going to help, wake you up a bit and make your, eyes feel clearer and make your mind feel clearer. Um, and perhaps even, create a clearer path for motivation and inspirations of creativity, because it does build heat. You are building fire, and fire being a creative energy, you are able to harness it and direct it a little better. Gosh, there's so many. I mean, realistically, elementally, like, both of those are going to be very necessary. If you're feeling too much and you feel like your skins are going to split, and it's very heart ridden and it's very water energy, then that's Ujjayi breathing. And Ujjayi obviously is very much technical and specific, more so than just a typical water breath, as far as I describe it, because water breathing would be, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth steadily, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth steadily. but ujjayi can be specifically characterized by the sensation of the widening of your throat and the soft vibration of pursing your lips and a very narrow exhale. So there are very much yogic elements to it that more clearly define it than just a cult or just what I've received in meditation. And then likewise the fire. Da, 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 I mean, obviously, breathing in through your nose is 10 times better. But for the specific weirdos, you kind of get that much more head high, and that is because it is a bit of a hypoxic state. If you inhale through the mouth and exhale through the nose in that three fire pop, gosh, even in that, like you feel the invigoration, you feel the tingles, you feel the clarity, you feel it's kind of like a meditative bump. And can direct and clarify where it is that you want to take that energy or pull that energy to the surface. So you can clear some breath, you can create some breath. I hope that that helps you both relieve some tension in your body and also bring you back into your body. And an earth breath will always do that too, in and out through your nose, 100%. I would actually, honestly, saying that now, I would prefer if you're going to do fire breath, especially at this point in time, because everything's so heated, to maintain it through your nose. I think everybody's trying to pop open their third eye. Nobody's trying to ground in their body. We've got all kinds of spirits just like out of body, and it's like one big music festival, and I don't like it. And I don't like it. Let's pull the spirit back into the body and in a knowledgeable and intentional way. Mocos went everywhere. Good, good. Absolutely. You got to clear those things out because the mucosa in your nostril cavity is actually very important as far as filtering or tempering the pressure, temperature of the air that you intake, filtering any bacteria, especially because the air quality has been worse and worse with thinner cold air, with humid hot air, or with any residual gases that have been left in the air from protests and assaults on protesters. In which case we could do it all together. Why don't we run through? We'll run through like a wheel of it, okay? Starting with the water. We'll do 3 of each. We'll go. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Do we start with? No. Okay. Bear with me. My brain is everywhere. Fire, earth, air, water is how we're gonna go. Fire breath, earth breath, air breath, water breath. Lovely. Okay. Fire breath is going to help clear this out too. Take a big breath in through your mouth and breathe it out through your nose in sharp exhales. Second one. Do you feel the air bring heat upwards? I got mucks too. And exactly, it's going to clear out sinus cavities, especially if you're dealing with dry heat as the temperatures change. Doing that first thing in the morning is going to be a game changer as far as sinus issues or sinus compression. Earth breath, as far as grounding, you've been stressed, you've had a long day, you want to decompress right before you go to bed, whatever it is, you want to feel in your body. Or, perhaps we have anxiety, perhaps we have vertigo, perhaps we have multiple things that make us feel outside of our body. Earth breath, in through your nose, out through your nose. You will feel the breath carry in, sort of solidify in your throat. And when you exhale, breathe it down into your body so that you feel it sort of like in the basin of your hips. It's very filling. It almost feels like you're eating your own breath. But so an earth breath in through your nose and out through your nose. In through your nose and out through your nose. In through your nose and out through your nose. And I hope you can kind of feel like maybe more roundness in your shoulders, even more breath in your chest, more of the solidified quality of where that breath can feel in your body. Because too often do I think we really only have awareness of the sensation of breath outside of us and what it's like to expel that. So it's very becoming for the psyche and the body to really ingrain what it feels like inside. An air breath would really be in and out through your mouth, which would absolutely cause a hypoxic state. I do not recommend it for everybody. However, it is also part of Wim Hof breathing or an inversion of traditional Tumo breathing, which I specify the differences of those in my Decolonize Your Mind class. But it is very clearing, especially if you know have a sore throat, if you feel like you've got a frog in your throat, if you want to open your throat chakra. I think ideally with this though, retentions are going to be a key point in its helpfulness, because we're expelling energy, but then we on that hold again, nitrous oxide, we feed the mitochondria and the cells that much more. So it is more depleting, but it is also more rewarding equal parts, which is maybe why it's so expansive and air ridden in that way. And so we can we'll do 3 and then we'll take a small hold. I feel like that's a good rhythm for it. Yeah? Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And a bit clearing. Oh, it's going to cut me off. And so you have a bit of clearing. I think specifically with that, with any retentions, you want your release to be as relaxed as possible because it can be dangerous. Absolutely can. Breath retentions, especially within competitive nature, can absolutely be very dangerous. And from what I've gathered in scientific research, a very deciding factor of that is the rate at which oxygen is reintroduced to the brain. So you do not want. Yes, exactly. But you don't. But because of that, very powerful. But with great power becomes great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. So you want to uh, be mindful of that and don't force it. Also, fun fact: if you bring your tongue into it, then you also bring your root chakra into it as well. So I can't say I know the Sanskrit name for it, but in lion's breath or in Samakriya, your is also activating the root chakra. So that's a funny accommodation for it, for you to tweak too. And with water breath, your traditional ujjayi, you're going to breathe in through the nose, airing the breath, feeling it trace the roundness and open up the whole way of your throat. And exhale through pursed lips gently. Inhale through the nose. And Inhale through the nose. And exhale through the mouth. And that would be a full cycle of all elements. What I like to visualize is the medicine wheel of my breath. But I think in a culture, you can also attribute it to the, what is it, right, left banishing ritual, but also like Enochian conjuring, um, will all very much roll within those elements, and within that order, fire, earth, air, water, rather than whatever nonsense we've heard. And so I will be reposting this so you can do it again. But 100%, take some time and sit with yourself and notice the difference in the elements and the things that you experience with each breath, the difference of sensations that you feel with each breath, the difference in feeling, even. And having gone through all of them, we do have this, exactly, this very natural high, this very, it's like utilizing all topic sources. It's like a cleansing of topic layers. And so we this is very much was a kind of like a group cleansing, and you can take this knowledge and get to know each one of those things independently in your body so that you can utilize them independently and all together as you need. So I hope that that is particularly useful and helpful for you. With that, we're gonna go old school, and I'm gonna close out with the first mantra I learned. Is that cool? Is that cool? Full on avatar breath. That's the point. Alrighty. Thank you. I appreciate you all so much. I'm glad that that was also very rewarding for you, and it's not a long practice either. So these are the things that we can do to maintain our energy, to maintain our health, to maintain our sanity in these times. But so with that, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Om Bhura Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo yo na prachodaya. Om Bhura Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo yo na prachodaya. Tatsavitu Varinyam Bargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yo Na Prachodhayat. Ashe, Ashe, Wado, Kalileka, Shriya, Shrinekoya, Skoista. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate everybody that takes the time to not just be here, but to be with themselves. May this knowledge continue to serve you time and time again in the same ways that it has served me, in immensely beautiful and constantly regenerating ways. And until then, until next time, Tanadakoi. Thank you. And I'll see you later.